Room 237 is a Jumperscape audio production. There's more beyond the door than you are prepared for, stranger. Welcome to Room 237.
Hello and welcome back into Room 237. I am James.
And I'm Ashton. Not Connor this time.
Yeah, long time no see. Sorry about no episode last week. Whoopsie daisy.
It happens.
So let's just kind of get right into it. What are we doing today?
So today we're covering 2024 Nosferatu. Very excited.
Nice.
I'm very excited. I really liked this movie. And shocker for everybody. So Robert
Eggers.
I keep trying to say the film critic.
Roger Ebert?
Ebert. I keep trying to say Ebert.
He's not even a Robert.
I don't know. But anyway, I actually like this movie. We have a troubled past, but I think we're ready to
have a troubled past.
I'm saying me and Robert have a troubled past. And I'm ready to put that past behind me because I cried.
Look at
We
this.
saw this movie twice. I cried both times.
We pretty much just got out of the theater from our second viewing.
Yes.
And wow, this is a really good movie.
It's so good.
My expectations were high, which was worrying because I feel like you never want to go into a movie with high expectations because you're almost always a little disappointed. But I was not. In fact, my expectations were actually lower than how I felt about the movie.
I came into the movie with low expectations because I'd come into every other Eggers movie with kind of high expectations. I'm a period piece person. Oh yeah, Austin made me try some of the licorice, and I didn't finish it because it still has licorice consistency, which is chewy and hard at the same time. And I don't really do well with that. But anyway, I went in with pretty low expectations because I like period pieces. And so every time we've gone to watch an Eggers film, I've been like, oh, this will be my shit. Because I love period pieces, but I've not hated, just his movies has not been my thing so far. This movie is my thing. We've got Lily Rose Depp as Ellen. And Nicholas Hoult.
There you go.
I got it this time. Nicholas Hoult is Thomas. We've got Skarsgård Bill
Skarsgård.
Yes. There's too many Skarsgårds out there, okay? Why? They're all the same family. It's not just a common last name. They're all just.
It's an acting family.
It's an acting family.
It's like a ye old acting troupe kind of family.
The Skarsgårds. Bill Skarsgård as Count
Orlok.
I almost said Count Olaf.
Oh no.
My brain and letters today.
You need to start having just on your phone.
Just
maybe it adds to the value.
I think it does. I think it's part of my charm. Okay, the audible dyslexia is just.
I don't think that's a thing.
Is there a better way to describe it?
Dyslexia.
Is there a better way to describe it?
No.
Exactly. It's part of the charm of the show, okay? These three make up a perfect cast of a great movie, and I'm really excited for us to cover it because
there's even more great cast members that we'll get into.
Yes, we'll get further into it, but I wanted to get our leads.
So this is a rare case of I don't think there was a single dud performance in the movie.
Absolutely not.
A lot of people have been saying, "Oh, Aaron Taylor Johnson ruined the movie."
They want to hate on Aaron Taylor Johnson for being Aaron Taylor Johnson.
Because is he a dry nothing actor in a lot of movies? Yeah. But is he in this movie? No.
He cried.
He cried.
He cried in this movie.
He
God damn
perfectly
it.
played that like rich hoity-toity like guy
Who loves his
character.
wife
Who loves his wife
and his family. That's what's really significant, I think, about his character is like he's the rich hoity-toity stoic. I want to say British, but they're German. But he's that rich hoity-toity stoic person. But he immediately melts when it comes to his family, and it's
He reminds me of Scrooge's nephew.
Yes,
That's what he reminds me of.
He's so much like Scrooge's nephew. That's great. That's a great comparison. I really liked that.
And like, and he actually shows a lot of range in this movie. I think like, yeah, he's kind of doing the same thing for most of the movie, which is like, I will not be party to these fantasies, like, and stuff like that. But like, he shows he can be emotional. Like his emotional moments, which this is the non-spoiler section, so I won't get into it, are like heartbreaking.
They're part of the reason why I cry every time I watch this movie. And I will say for our listeners who listen to us and struggle to watch these movies, this is not going to be a struggle for you.
Mm-hmm.
It's creepy. And I feel like you feel the fear through the characters and the characters' reactions. But I would say there's only one or two moments where I just got jump scared because it's loud in a movie theater. And it was even the second time we watched it, it got me even worse because we're in a movie theater with like 5 other people in the movie theater. Okay.
Yeah. The first time I saw it,
sound
it was
is bouncing all over the place. It's so much louder than it was the first time. But yeah, I would even say the opening parts of this movie are the most scary.
Yeah.
I guess.
And to continue, because I think this might be actually a good way going forward to like do our non-spoilers, talk about like each like the standout performances here.
Okay.
Like moving on to Nicholas Hoult.
Yes.
He does we were talking about it in the car. His face of fear
is so
good.
It's so convincing. It scares you. You feel the fear because, to be honest, the Count just looks like a man. Like a little decrepit.
Which that was the idea.
Extra long fingers. Yeah, that's the idea, of course.
But the thing is, you put yourself in his situation.
Yes.
You see his face, and you picture yourself in a dark castle far away from home, and you're in a room with him.
Yeah.
I would also be like...
He sells the horror of the movie, is exactly what happens. His face of fear is like just... It's perfect.
Yes. And Thomas is like the perfect husband because you think of the time period. I don't think there's many husbands that wouldn't just like immediately leave or immediately put their wife into the loony bin.
Well, and I think that's what that's what makes our characters in this story stand out a little bit more, because when you look at the time period, most marriages are arranged. You're marrying for money and wealth, so because women couldn't have money, so they had to marry for money or they'd live on the street, essentially, or with their parents until their parents kicked them out and then they live on the street. But in this story, our characters all love each other.
Yes.
Did you notice that?
I'd say we see a more realistic version of what it probably more looked like in 1830s. Because, yes, those things happened and it was real and it was pretty widespread, but like not everyone was an emotionless monster.
Well, no,
like,
that's not what I'm saying, but it's not I love my wife because it is part of my duty. These people love their wives.
Yes.
Because you can see it shows off in Aaron Taylor Johnson's family. I mean, he loves his family. He loves his wife. And his whole stoicness melts around her. And the same thing with Thomas. He desperately loves his wife. I mean, she's got tons of problems. But there's something to be said about that, because even in classic love stories of this is Victorian era, but I'm even thinking before that into the Regency era. Classic stories, Jane Austen stories, they love each other. It's supposed to be real, but it's very stoic.
Yeah.
You look at Pride and Prejudice, and in a lot of performances of that, there are some where you see Darcy just lose the stoicness and just melt. And that's true of the story. When you read it, you can feel him just melt. It's great. I love Pride and Prejudice and Colin Firth.
Settle down.
Colin Firth as Mr. Darcy is great, okay? But even in those stories, Emma, they're very stoic. There's not this I love my wife energy about them. There's like this
This is my wife.
This is my wife. I pine for her, I guess. But it's not, it's very much, it doesn't feel real. It's not a very, so I don't know. It makes our characters stand out because they are in love.
Yes.
Very realistically.
And it makes like the rest of the story, it makes you care.
Mm-hmm.
And that leads into, I'm going to combo these two, but I'm mainly talking about Willem Dafoe.
Okay.
Willem Dafoe is amazing in this movie. And Ralph Ineson, I believe is his name, who played the other doctor.
Yeah, I've been wanting to look him up because I feel like I've seen him with the freaking sideburns in something else.
Yeah, he was the dad in The Witch.
Oh, duh. But I feel like I've seen him in something else like that too. So,
and
continue.
They are both very, very good. But Willem Dafoe, he has a nasty habit these days of stealing every scene he's in. Because like he's not in the movie that much. He only shows up like about halfway through. But every scene he's there, I'm like, yes. Like he's had this habit recently of every character he's played in the last, like, I'd say 5 years is a caricature of a certain type of character, but he plays it so honest and so like real that it like doesn't stick out or anything. It feels natural.
He plays a lot of period type characters. Sorry, I'm
You're
looking
fine.
at Ralph Ineson. Because he was our Father Brennan also in The First Omen.
Yes.
And looking at his history, lots of period pieces. So I'm sure I've just seen him in sideburns in almost everything I've ever seen him in.
Probably.
Sorry.
Yeah, Willem Dafoe, has a habit of playing these caricature type characters and just making them feel like a real person.
I think that's what I feel pulls you in with this character a lot, because if you would just read this character on paper, I feel like it would just be like, man, this guy's just nuts.
Yeah, this guy's crazy.
But when you see him and the way Willem portrays him is very much, there's a reason behind everything he does, and you can see the thought behind everything and the earnest in which he delivers lines is just immaculate.
It's great. When I think that can lead into Ellen, who's played by Lily Rose Depp.
Lily Rose Depp is so good in this movie.
She does a really amazing job.
Oh my goodness. I can't get over her performance. It's just amazing. And by the way, she is so pretty. Every time I'm like, for one, now that I've seen her in Victorian era dress, I'm like, please, can we have her play Queen Victoria at some point? Because she looks like she'd play a great and very convincing Queen Victoria.
Oh, for sure.
But also just, you can really see her anguish. And one scene in particular that I think really shows off her performance is when she's talking to Thomas about her nightmare. And we'll get into that a little bit more, but she's obviously afraid that the nightmare is scary. But when she's describing it, she's describing herself as feeling so happy. And you see this bright, huge smile grace her face, but also like there's just fear and dread throughout the rest of her body.
Mhm.
It is so well done and it's so perfectly performed. I just couldn't imagine anyone else being able to do it like
Oh
that.
yeah, for sure.
It was great.
Well, originally, the role went to Anya Taylor-Joy,
that checks
but
out.
she backed out of the project, or she had a conflict or something. So honestly, I think it was probably a blessing in disguise. I love Anya Taylor-Joy.
I adore that woman.
But I think that this role will be huge for Lily Rose Depp's career.
She did such an amazing job.
Yes, that was like a coming out kind of role, like where it's like, okay, I am a capital A actor.
Although I also see just in certain various scenes, just from her appearance and kind of the spooky way she acts, I do see why am I forgetting his name all of a sudden? Oh, who's that director? What's the name of the director? The Beetlejuice guy.
Oh,
Tim Burton. Thank you. I don't know why your face made me think of it. I can see Tim Burton like scooping her up after this movie. I'm not gonna lie.
Yeah, probably.
I see it happening.
Does she have any relation to Johnny Depp?
That's her dad.
I didn't know that.
That's her dad.
Well, I mean, Johnny Depp already got scooped up by Tim Burton.
I know. She just has a very Tim Burton look, which isn't surprising because Johnny Depp is
you
the
learn
Tim
something
Burton
new
look.
every day.
I did have to look it up because I was like, I don't want to make assumptions, but yes.
Okay, so you didn't know. You looked it up.
I was pretty sure. So I did Google it.
Look like you were judging me for not knowing.
I was pretty sure I knew, but sometimes TikTok lies.
But anyway, there's one more performance I want to talk about in depth before we get into spoilers. And that is Bill Skarsgård as Count Orlok. Wow. I think Austin said it best. Bill Skarsgård is pretty much like the next like Andy Serkis. In terms of like he can just step into these transformative characters where you can't recognize them anymore.
No, it's very
play
clear.
Anything.
Yeah, he is. I don't want to say blank canvas because I feel like that comes off wrong. But he is like a blank canvas actor. You can put him into any single role. He can play because he's been in like.
Well, he's creative. He knows a lot of the quirks that he came up with for Pennywise, like he came up with them. Yeah. Like the eyes, the mouth thing. Yeah. Like, and he straight up went to, for this role, he straight up went to an opera instructor to help him learn how to get his voice lower. Wow. Because they didn't pitch him down or anything. He got his voice down a whole octave for this role.
That's insane. Those poor vocal cords.
Because his voice is awesome.
It is awesome.
It rumbles the entire theater every time he speaks.
I was wondering about that because it almost feels like I was wondering if he did the voice or if they had somebody come in and do that voiceover because it is just so powerful.
I mean, think about it. He goes from, "Hey, Georgie," to just,
I couldn't even do it. It's very good, and not only in the vocal performance but in his physical performance as well. He just is immaculate at.
He knows how to be a presence.
Yes,
he is.
Anytime he's on screen, he's just the thing you are thinking of and the thing you're looking at.
Because he's a pretty tall actor, but they make him look like he's goddamn 8 feet tall.
He looks massive. He takes up so much space. And
part of it is his drip, you know?
Well, right. But even I guess spiritually, he takes up space. And it comes through very well. And the other thing I think too is a lot of the physicality of moving like a decrepit person whose body's been reanimated almost. He moves like an old person, but also fast. If you know what I mean?
Yes.
If you can get, like, there's still that shake and there's still like the slow movements of his hands,
But you have
its
no
arm
doubt
goes there
It's
faster.
like he looks and moves like he's weak, but at the same time, you know he's not.
Yeah, exactly. And the other thing is, I'm not sure if they added it in ADR, but I'm sure it was him. The breathing,
Oh, yeah.
the labored breathing is a crucial
Unsettling.
part of his performance because it's what makes the character feel fearful. Like you're like, oh my god, this is a reanimated dead person.
Yes. And to round out the rest of the cast, there's also Emma Corrin, who played Anna Harding, and she did a great job too.
I love Emma Corrin. She played Princess Di in The Crown. She has my heart. She is also a fantastic character actress.
Yes.
The way she stepped into it's so clear because you think when you see her in The Crown that she's just like that. She just talks like Princess Di and has that like meeker quality about her, but that's not true at all. Like she's very outgoing, and also she just is. I just love her. I love this woman.
And she has a couple really good like moments to act in this movie.
Well, exactly.
Sorry.
No, go ahead. I'm sorry. I didn't
I was
mean
just
to.
going to say, and then we also have Simon McBurney as Harnock, and I thought he was Gary Oldman when I first saw him, and I was like, I don't remember Gary Oldman being in this movie, like on the cast list, and I was like, oh wait, no, that's not him.
He does do a really good job at playing a crazy person.
Yes.
For sure.
It's funny. I was still questioning it until we saw him naked, and I was like, I don't think Gary Oldman would do this. He would do a lot of things. I just don't think he doesn't strike me as being naked on screen. If I'm wrong and he's already done it,
I'm sure he's already
tell me
done
what
it.
movie.
I feel
so
like
I
he's
can
already
watch
done it. Like I feel in my bones.
You know, he probably did it in Dracula.
I feel it in my bones that Gary Oldman's
he was
been naked
Dracula
on
in
screen.
Bram Stoker's. That's what made me think it was him. And I was like,
oh, that's cool.
because I wasn't familiar with the story, so I was thinking maybe that we were just going to see this character and he was like basically a cameo. But no, he's pretty important.
Yeah, he's very important.
Because funny enough, this is the first Dracula story I've ever consumed in its entirety.
Really? Huh.
I never watched Bela Lugosi, which I should. And I've never watched Bram Stoker's Dracula with Gary Oldman in it.
I guess this is the first film adaptation of a Dracula story I've seen.
Well, it makes me want to go back and just watch a bunch of them. Probably not cover them here because that would kind of get annoying if we covered the same story multiple times.
Yeah.
But
I have seen the stage play of Dracula as well as the ballet Dracula. So
yeah,
I've consumed vampire lore my entire life.
we should watch either the Bela Lugosi 1930s Dracula or
Oh wait, I have
Gary
seen
Oldman's
the 1930s, I think, Dracula.
Children of the Night.
Yes, I have seen that one.
What music they make.
I forget why. I think it was October. I think we watched it for like Oktoberfest. Like we were doing some Oktoberfest thing and we watched Dracula.
That's weird. Why?
Because it takes place during Oktoberfest, I believe the original movie one.
Oh, that's random.
I think. I might be
Oktoberfest
wrong.
No matter its name, it's not a spooky holiday.
Well, right, but it's just what everyone was gathering for, I think. Or was that, I don't know. I watched it for something like that, but
She has watched it.
I watched it. It was a long time ago, though. But shall we get into this?
Yeah, well, first,
Oh, he has another.
how many... Oh, man. I had one. I lost it.
It's gone.
Yeah, it was funny.
How many? Trying to think of one that's funny and not just like stupid.
Well, how many of Bill Skarsgård's prosthetic wieners out of 10 would you get this movie?
I honestly think 9.8 out
Just
of 10.
there.
It's just
you,
there.
You feel a 9 is too low.
I feel a 9 is too low, but in looking at my favorite horror movies, I don't want to give it a 10 because it's not with those. Because it's not something, I mean, I'm going to rave about it for a while, but I'm not going to rave about it for the rest of my life. You know what I mean?
Yeah. 9. It is also close for me, but it is a 9.
Mhm.
I believe I gave Lighthouse a 10. Or it might have also been a 9. I think it's literally, for me personally, I know you don't agree, Lighthouse, Nosferatu, The Witch. That's my Robert Eggers list.
My Robert Eggers list is Nosferatu. And anything else that I've seen from him, I haven't really enjoyed that much. So
Your problem, not mine.
I know.
Anyway, so the movie starts with...
It opens with this nightmare sequence, or not exactly a nightmare sequence, like a trance sequence, where really Lily Rose Depp's character is begging for
a guardian angel,
yes.
some kind of positive.
And I wrote down on the
spirit.
second watch that it very much reminds me of Phantom of the Opera. Like, come to me, angel, come to me, guardian angel. Very, very much like that. And we see her walk to this window and we get this beautiful, super creepy imagery where the drapes are flying and we see the shadow of Nosferatu in the drapes, but the drapes fly away and there's nothing there. And it's gorgeous. It's very well done. Because I was like ready to see him, and we don't get to see him until the end of this scene.
And because she's walking out into the courtyard and she lays down and she starts making sounds.
Yeah.
And then we get jump scared. And I was shocked. I didn't think we'd just see him in the first 5 minutes. Granted, it's a very blink and you miss it jump scare, but like you see all of him pretty much.
Yeah. I honestly think this is the scariest he is in the entire movie, is that jump scare.
Yeah. I disagree with that, but
well, in the terms of
because for me,
conventional horror.
Yeah, well, for me, I kind of, we'll get there, but I lean towards, I think he's at his scariest when Thomas is at the castle. Sure, he's just chilling and hanging around for most of that, but his presence is so imposing that it's like scary. But so she wakes up and this is where we meet this couple of Ellen and Thomas. Oh, what's their last name? It's not important.
It's not that important.
And so we kind of learn a little bit about their history where she's saying, I had a nightmare. Hutter, that's right. I knew it was H. And this is a good highlight of why you can tell this is feels like a genuine marriage, because when he's telling her do not think of these things, do not even speak them. You can tell it's not coming from a place of don't embarrass me, right. Or anything. It's like he's saying the more you think about it, the worse it gets.
Well, and he's holding her and he's comforting her from this nightmare. And the other thing is I think that what really sells his love for her to me is he talks about it was supposed to, the dream was of their wedding, but she ends up marrying death and everybody's dead. And he doesn't let what she's saying bother him. He just comforts her. Which is not,
because we learn about that dream later.
I thought that was the first dream.
Yeah, but it's when she finds out he's leaving. Because he's like, okay, I gotta go to work, basically. Yeah. And she's like, no, stay. Take your shoes off.
Yeah.
And he's like, that's nice, but money.
Well, and she has a little premonition here where she says that the position is already filled and they're going to send him away. So the reason she's trying to get him back into bed is not just because she wants to get him back into bed. It's because she knows when he goes, he's going to leave.
Mm-hmm. And she's right, because he goes to work. He's told, hey, we have an account that you need to go. It's for this eccentric old man in backwater country. And then they never say Transylvania in the movie. They just point to it on a map.
Yeah.
And it's like, is Count... I hate that they did a dramatic reveal. They were like, Count Orlok.
Yeah.
And... But so basically he's told that he's going there to sell an old dilapidated mansion for him to go retire in.
Yeah.
And
He's
he's
going to
like,
get
well,
him
why
to sign
can't he
the
come
deed.
here? Well, he's a bit, he's really old and he can't move because he's really old. That's the reason he can't move. I'm trustworthy.
Yeah, right.
So he's going to go on a little adventure, and I would say Herr Nock looks a bit too excited about it, and there's a reason. But this kind of very much upsets Ellen.
Yes.
She's like basically saying, no, you can't go, and she confesses what her nightmare was.
Right.
And says, see, it's not just a normal nightmare, it's a premonition, it's things to come, it means bad stuff.
Yeah.
And he's like, I'm sorry.
Like I have to go. We need like money for a house.
Because like I'm saying, if I was in this situation and you were like, I had a nightmare, you can't go do your job or you'll die, I would say, but we need money.
Yeah.
It was just a dream.
Right.
And so he offers to have her go stay with his old school buddy.
Yeah.
Oh God, I forgot the character's name.
Yeah, I only know that it's Aaron Taylor Johnson.
I need to get out of this brain.
Harding.
What's his first name?
Friedrich
Harding. Now I remember because he was going to name his unborn son.
Little Friedrich.
Yeah, Friedrich Harding and Anne Harding, his wife.
Yeah, and Anne is really good friends as well with
Ellen.
With Ellen.
So she's going to go stay there while he goes on his little adventure.
Yeah.
And she eventually does like come to terms with it, and she's like, oh, we'll come back safe, but you can tell she's...
Yeah.
Because we get some scenes of like her up at night and
she's in that weird like trance state again. I noticed on our second watch, and she cuts off a bit of her hair and puts it in a locket for him.
Yes. And so he's off on an adventure. And I'd say that this is where my enjoyment of the movie really started. Because at first, like, it was a lot of just establishing characters, and I was like, okay, like, I see where this is going. But like once he's on his journey, like, I got locked in. Because his first stop is at this inn in Romania. And there's a lot of Romani people outside basically having a little festival out there. And this is one of those Robert Eggers moments where they're all like circling him and staring in weird ways.
Yeah.
Which is like just such a Robert Eggers thing to do. And then what is with this guy who comes out of the inn and he just looks like Captain Hook, and he just starts laughing and then everyone else laughs with him.
Yeah.
It's really weird. But then the owner of the inn comes out and he's like, all y'all get out of here.
Right.
He calls them the G word. I don't think I can say it here. It's a slur now, isn't it?
I guess. But okay. But anyway.
Yeah, but he calls them that. Is it not? Am I wrong?
It like is but isn't at the same time. Like it's like,
okay, I will say it just for everyone confused. Gypsy.
Yeah.
And so he stays at the inn. He offers to pay double because when everyone learns he's gonna go to Castle Orlok, they're like, don't even say that name around here.
Right.
But he retires to bed after being stared at a lot. But he wakes up in the middle of the night to chanting outside.
Yeah, they're doing this weird ritual
Yeah.
with the naked lady.
They're professing a naked virgin out into the woods. And it's so cool seeing all of their little, they just show a bunch of superstitions. Like we see a lady like, blessing a door with garlic and like all kinds of stuff like that. But they profess her out into the woods and they exhume a corpse and they stake it. And that thing threw up. Was that just the body reacting to getting stabbed, or was that also a vampire?
They called it a vampire.
They did.
And it did react, so I don't know.
So I will just say they staked a vampire.
One of the great mysteries of Nosferatu.
And Thomas is greatly offended by this display.
But then he just wakes up in bed.
But he has dirt on his feet.
He has dirt on his shoes. So we don't know really
what happened
there. It's kind of questionable.
But he gets up to leave and literally everyone's gone.
Yeah, they've all disappeared.
Like even the innkeepers, like nowhere in sight.
No, nobody is there.
But he continues on his journey, and I'd say this is the most gorgeous moment of the movie, in my opinion.
So pretty.
When he's on the road, just walking in the snow.
He reaches a crossroad.
Yep, he reaches a crossroad, and like just the moonlight reflecting the snow, and like on this like it is basically a tunnel of trees, and you start seeing something and hearing something, and it's a horse and it's a stagecoach.
Yeah.
With horses, and he just for some reason Thomas doesn't get out of the way, but then like he stops before he gets hit, and then he opens his eyes, and the stagecoach is now just turned for him and the door slowly opens.
It's very disorienting. But another thing about this scene that I have to mention, and they do it a couple times I think throughout the movie, but there's so little it's like in black and white, but it isn't, because it's just that there's so little light in the scene.
This
that
movie doesn't
makes it look in black. There's no light to reflect, so it's in black and white essentially.
It's a very clever and visually like gorgeous way to shoot nighttime.
Yes.
Because it's basically black and white because of how dark it's lit. Like the moonlight gives you a little bit of color, but not a lot.
Yeah.
Like, so you can tell something like is coming over him because he's not himself right now.
No.
He gets into the carriage, and that's when we finally see the castle for the first time, and it is massive, imposing, and also beautiful.
Yes.
What you scribbling?
The little just circles.
And then so he walks in, and this is where we meet Count Orlok for the first time.
Yes.
He's just kind of awkwardly standing there, and he starts walking. And he basically says, "You are late."
Yeah.
He says he sent all of his servants to retire already, which I wonder if that was a lie or if he does just have servants around.
No, I think it's a lie.
It's probably a lie.
I think it's a lie because
to make him not question the emptiness of the castle.
Exactly. And I think he knows once he reaches past this point, like he's not going to have to convince him of anything.
This castle is abandoned.
Yes.
And so we go into this like dining room with a lit fireplace, and they just have a conversation about you know the reason he's there, and that's to sell him the house. Yeah.
Yeah, and he offers him food, and Thomas is so already like disoriented and scared. He cuts through the bread and cuts himself.
Take heed of what you do.
Yeah.
I'm sad we didn't get what happens in the original Nosferatu, where he just walks over and starts sucking on his thumb.
Yeah, he's like, precious blood.
But he's just like, go by the fire, and he just kind of teleports to the fire.
Yeah, it's very clear we're seeing this kind of through Thomas's lens, which is just like
complete haze.
Yeah, he's very hazy. Something's wrong for sure.
And the last that we see is he approaches, Nosferatu approaches him, and then it cuts.
Yes.
And he is just laying there asleep on like a uncomfortable looking chair.
And somewhere throughout when he left and getting to this castle, we got a glimpse of the proprietor of the place that he worked.
Ernok.
Yes, sitting naked on his floor in the middle of like, it's not a pentagram, but it's some sort of occult.
Yeah, it's all over
thing.
Orlok's.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's literally his stamp for
Yeah.
The papers.
Yeah. And just saying, you know, like basically professing his devotion to the Count. And so we get the not just the feeling, we get the actual payout to know, oh, this guy he did it on purpose.
Yeah.
And what's funny is I went and watched the original movie to kind of compare, which is hard to do because they're essentially old silent film, I think, is a completely different medium to what we watch nowadays. So it's a very, they're not really comparable. But I was like, in that story, they literally show him doing like religious scrambles and stuff before Thomas even walks in the room. So you know it's a setup. But in this version, the setup is revealed a little bit later. When we watched it the second time, though, I noticed there are those pieces and parts. Like if you have a keen eye, you can pick up on it. He's got religious writings and stuff sitting on his desk that he quickly covers up with other things. So I thought that was really cool.
Yeah.
It's a cool note. And when you go to watch the movie, look out for it because it's great because you and I questioned if that's what it was because it was just writing in a different language or whatever. But then he takes another piece of paper and very quickly covers it up. And I went, oh, I was right.
Yeah. So to kind of briefly summarize Thomas's time at the castle, every morning, he keeps waking up with bite marks on his chest.
Mm-hmm.
And every night he spends with Count Orlok. And Count Orlok is just, you know, he's doesn't have a lot of tact. But eventually it leads into the papers, quote unquote, for the mansion being handed for Thomas to sign.
Mm-hmm.
He's like, looks at it, and it clearly does not look like a normal deed.
Yeah.
And he's obviously, Thomas knows something's wrong.
Mm-hmm.
And he's like, the papers are in the language of my ancestors.
Yeah.
And Thomas signs. Count Orlok sniffs the hair locket and takes it.
Yeah.
And Thomas is basically like, okay, well, the deal's closed. I must be going.
Can I leave, please?
And he's like, I'm having the most dreadful dreams. And he's just like, it is a black omen to travel in poor health. And basically just says, yeah, you're not going anywhere, buddy.
Yeah. Like, you're staying
under the guise of, hey, you're sick. You're can't
sick.
leave.
Please stay. But there was a thought in my head and it left. Shoot.
Oh well.
Yeah.
But that next day, when he wakes up, he's trying to leave.
Yeah.
But he finds a coffin in like a little crypt room, and he opens it, and we see a whole lot of Bill.
A whole lot of Orlok.
It's not really Bill. It's all prosthetic.
I think that Bill made it very clear it was prosthetic.
But he's like, yeah, I'm going to try and kill this thing. So he goes to swing like a pickaxe at him. And of course, Count Orlok just catches it and like aura checks him immediately. Full wang out and all.
Yeah.
But that just leads to Thomas cornering himself in a room. And we see the shadow of Count Orlok like come in, and it looks like he just kind of controls Thomas to unlock the door. And then he's so much aura. We just see Count Orlok with big ass fur jacket and 2 dogs in the hallway.
Yeah, and throughout this we get little glimpses of Ellen, and
Yes,
she's not doing too hot.
She's reacting with this.
So she like walks out the door and does her pretty little ballet finger thingy, and Orlok at the same time, it's almost like they're moving together.
Yes, and he calls out to her and says like, "Your husband is mine."
Yeah, something like that. He's
lost. And so he sucks him.
Yeah.
It's really gross.
It is really gross. One thing I wanted to mention though that I thought was cool is the older perception of vampire, with the sucking of the blood and everything. I like that the bites are all near the heart.
Yes.
Because the thought isn't the arteries aren't really like a thing that like Bram Stoker would have thought about when he wrote Dracula. So they would have thought blood would have been most easiest to get to from the heart. Rather than now when you look at vampires, you see perception of vampires.
And it was
and
also
they
more,
fight for your carotid.
It was also seen, it was more poetic.
Soul. It was taking of your sucking of your soul more.
So that's,
I always like
they
the
went
chest
back.
ones.
They went back to that in this movie because the neck biting was pretty much invented by Hollywood.
Yeah.
Is it now iconic and kind of weird to see a vampire in a oddly sexual manner on top of somebody sucking blood from their heart? Yes, but it's a lot more poetic and it's a lot more unsettling if you ask me.
Yes. Agreed. But that was something I wanted to mention because I thought it was cool.
But Thomas lives. He gets he gets chased out a window by some dogs, and Count Orlok is getting himself shipped to Germany.
What's the name of that
on
ship?
the Demeter?
The Demeter, that's right.
Or Demeter, whoever, whatever. I say Demeter. Whatever.
Demeter, yeah. It's a Greek name. Those are hard.
And Ellen has lost her mind.
Yes. She is having nightmares and convulsions every single night. And you get a interesting look into old medicine.
Yeah.
Which I find it's very much focused on like blood flow. They say that she's having these convulsions and these nightmares.
She has too
and
much blood.
She has too much blood. She isn't sleeping in the right posture, so the blood is coagulating somewhere, and
so we have to make her sleep in a corset.
Yeah, I don't promote that. Don't sleep in a corset.
And then just using oh god, what do they call it? I know it's not what they called it, but chloroform to make her sleep.
Ether. Yeah, ether. They use ether to make her sleep, which she's unconscious, but that's why it stops her. It's why it stops the convulsions and stuff, because it isn't really sleep, it's being unconscious, which is two different things. And everyone on their side of the world is getting a little anxious because what's going on here, and it's really revealed that she's had melancholy since she was a child, and it's returning, but it seems to be worse.
And that's the thing, that's what they say it is.
Yes,
in reality the melancholia is likely been Count Orlok almost for most of her life.
Yes, which she knows, but other people don't.
But that's essentially what they're chalking it up to, that it's come back because her husband's missing.
Yes.
And yes, bad.
Which is permanently what she believes. And because that's what she believes the most, it's what Anna, her best friend, believes.
Yeah.
Which is, it makes sense. And she continuously is getting upset more and more when she's not hearing from Thomas.
Yes. And then the doctor, as symptoms progress and get worse, the doctor's like, okay, I might know somebody.
Yeah.
And this is when we get to meet Willem Dafoe.
We get to meet
Willem Dafoe is a professor
who got kicked out.
Who got kicked out of his profession for being a bit too obsessed with the occult.
Yes.
And in the good way, in the wanting to fight it way, in the wanting to understand it way, not in the way that Hernock was obsessed with the cult,
Mm-hmm.
Sorry, readjusting.
Repositioning.
I'm going full crisscross applesauce. This could be a look for me.
We meet him in his apartment.
He's got
essentially.
a lot of cats.
He's got a lot of cats. He is smoking something and trying to converse with Hermes. But the stars were not aligned correctly, so he was not able to do so.
So great first impression.
Yeah, Aaron Taylor Johnson is
he's like,
he's not impressed.
No, he's like, are you serious?
He's like
basically,
is this really a doctor? But he gets convinced a little bit when Willem Dafoe turns around and says, "Oh, so you have an issue with a woman staying at your house who's dealing with nightmares and convulsions and
describes everything basically."
And he's like, yeah, essentially. So they invite him in.
Yes. And, he takes a good look at Ellen.
Yeah.
Also her cat. He likes cats.
And I know, but I love when he walks into the room and he goes, "Untie this child at once." And I was like, yes, thank you, Willem.
And so he is trying to communicate with her, and it's kind of working. But she ultimately arches her back and goes full possession mode.
Yeah. But what I do like about this portion of it is, even though he's definitely weird and not exactly the kind of doctor you'd want, he does understand that this is not just regular melancholia.
Yeah.
He says, stop drugging her. Stop tying her up. We need to just figure out what's going on here.
He's like, I believe she has an attachment from an unclean spirit, a demon probably.
Yeah.
And they're like,
huh?
I thought you said you were an expert in people who think that they're that there's dark spirits and demons
says,
inside of them. He's like, yes, this is not one of them.
Yeah, he's like, yeah, I've seen all of that. This is not it. They give up the bit at some point.
and he's like, and I like just how much he just knows. he's like, he likes people who are more prone to their animal-like instincts. Demons like them. I don't know.
Yeah, he's just like, yeah, demons just like horny people, essentially, is what he says. He's like, horny people, demons? Yeah.
Jesus. So I'm not going to talk too much about Orlok on the Demeter.
Yeah.
He's there.
He has a very great scene, though. So plague starts, ravaging the ship, whatever. And someone goes down and is like, I'm going to kill this thing because this is what's causing the plague on the ship. It's this thing. And so he comes down and there's all these ropes and coats and different things hanging on the wall. And he's walking past with this lantern. And you see him continuously walk past as everything's shaking. And you literally see the back of Orlok. Just he turns and you just
yeah,
it's so spooky.
Good.
It's so good. I know we were gonna just be quick with it, but yeah,
and then that guy dies.
He's dead.
But it does reveal all of the rats.
rats.
A lot of rats.
The rats. We're the rats.
I'm the big rat who breaks all of the rules. So yeah. Bad news for Friedrich.
Bad news bears.
After all this, there's a knock on the door. He's like, "What now?" And it's some guy and 2 soldiers.
Yeah.
And that's not something you probably want to see at your door at the wee hours of the morning.
And they show him to the plague ship.
Yep. And so the
he runs the boat company or whatever.
And meanwhile, Herr Nock had been captured and had been rambling in the loony bin about also the same things Ellen was ranting about of he's coming, he's near.
Yeah.
And he escaped by biting some guy's neck out.
Meanwhile, on the other side in Transylvania, Thomas was found by a local nun by phone, a local nun, and she took him in, and they've been healing him at a monastery in Transylvania.
Yes, but I was going to say real quick, Herr Nock brings Count Orlok to the castle he bought.
Well, yeah, but I was just saying first what this... Because Thomas comes back at the exact same time.
Yeah.
Because he leaves the monastery on horseback, and meanwhile, while we're seeing that guy run around saying, He's here. I do like
crazy. The dichotomy that you then get a shot of Ellen going, "He's here," and you think that she's also talking about Count Orlok.
And she runs out the door, and there's Thomas.
And
that's why what I was saying is important.
Something about this scene always it makes me laugh because the way Thomas rolls up, the way the horse just kind of kicks him off, and it's like, "All right, you're home."
You made it. Get off.
Because I think it's supposed to be him falling off, but it looks like the horse did it. So yeah, they bring him into bed and let him rest. Ellen has pretty much returned to herself, being herself. But Orlok, he's not very mean to his dear friend Herr Nock, who in the original story is Renfield, but he's just like, "Okay, thank you. Leave me alone, dude." He's like offering to kill Thomas. He's like, "No, I have use for him."
Right.
But so Orlok's settling in, moving in the furniture and stuff.
And he sends this shadow of his hand across the town. It's beautiful looking. And meanwhile, Thomas is not having a great time.
He is having nightmares.
Yes.
He pushes Ellen off of him.
Yeah, because he sees Orlok doing kind
of an annoying jump scare. So Ellen goes to sleep with Anne for the night.
Yes.
Because Friedrich is too busy dealing with plague rats.
Yeah.
Because I'm pretty sure he owns the port.
Yes.
Is what his job is.
Yes. Which, really grateful to see a port owner do the right thing and say, "Oh, there's a plague ship. I should let the authorities know and handle it."
Well, to be fair,
because I feel like in a lot of literature and storytelling I see with plague ships, they often burn the plague ship and then pretend it never happened, and then plague starts going around.
Whoopsies. Well, the thing that's kind of weird to me was the plague this dangerous at this time, or prevalent even?
It wasn't really prevalent. I don't think, because
but
there
I think
wasn't
it was probably
as many
enough to quarantine a town.
Yeah, it wasn't as prevalent because there wasn't as the way hygiene had changed.
Yeah.
But if you have a bunch of rats with plague and they're getting into people's homes and going everywhere, yes, the plague would still be spread pretty rapidly. It's not like they had ultimate plague cure,
Yeah, no, but
no plague vaccinations around here.
I guess my brain still went, kind of a weird pull for a story for the bubonic plague, and
I mean,
1830s.
plague ships still existed till way late because of rodents and stuff being on ships, and it would pass really quickly through people. So you would want to burn a plague ship, but good on him for actually telling the authorities. They probably still did burn the plague ship.
I mean, that's still a smart thing to do.
Yeah. But one thing about this moment with Ellen and Anna that I want to talk about, which is one of my favorite things about period pieces that take place in Victorian or Regency era, is there's this moment of like girlhood and friendship. Women were very commonly would sleep in the same beds and would say they loved each other, and it's such a like special moment, and it happens in almost every single piece of media I see or read that is like a period piece. And they're some of my favorite parts. You see it a lot in Jane Austen with the sisters, or in Emma, the friend she makes from the schoolhouse. But here it's Anna and Ellen, and they lay in bed together and they talk about how great it is that they're friends and that they love each other. And these moments are so special, and I love seeing them in this kind of media, and especially in this story. After watching, honestly, I'm not gonna lie, I very briefly watched / did other things while I had original Nosferatu on, so I missed some things. But the woman point of view is not prevalent whatsoever in original Nosferatu. It's very Thomas-centric.
Yeah.
And I think that's something that Nosferatu 2024 brings to us and deepens the story. And I really appreciate it. And I think there's a lot of thought that went into making that woman's perspective not just fit into the story because it makes sense in the story, but it deepens it and makes it more important. So,
well, like, I feel like this is like a perfect example of how to bring in a women's point of view into an existing story.
Yes.
Because like it's natural. It fits. And maybe it's because the story can fit it. Like it's just unique to the story. But like you see a lot of movies like attempt to force things like that, and it just feels forced.
The Marvel girl power moment. Oh God, it's terrible.
They did it twice too.
It like kind of worked in Infinity War, but then in Endgame it was like, oh my God, we did this thing in Infinity War where all the girls teamed up and people really liked it, so let's do it again but twice.
And even more cringy.
It was so bad.
Like, because it was fine in Infinity War. You're like, okay, yay. Like,
you were like, oh, cool, girl power. Because they all just like naturally came together and were like, we're going to fight this thing. But then in Endgame, it's like, it's almost like,
don't worry. She has help.
Yeah, like it's bad. It's so bad. And that's not how you put women's perspectives into media. You take a story that's about a woman and you let her talk about her own story. That's all you have to do. It's pretty easy. Is it that hard? Someone tell me, is that hard? Like this story, the reason it's easy for this story is the story revolves around Ellen.
But that's too hard. We have to gender reverse the Ghostbusters.
I liked that movie. Melissa McCarthy was funny.
I never watched it. I never watched it.
Movie. It was stupid, but it was funny.
Oh Lord.
But that's how you do it. You take a story that's always been about a woman, but has always been told from the male perspective, and you bring in that woman's perspective. And that's where we see a lot of the weird uses of medicine. We see how especially it affected women, because a lot of these melancholia and hysteria things, they were only geared towards women. If a man acted that way, it was a wholly different story. So, and it also deepens the ending that we're going to come to here soon by being from Ellen's perspective. So it's great, and I love this movie.
Yeah, I love this movie.
Yeah.
Where were we in the plot?
So Ellen and Anna are in bed, and
The ultimatum.
yes,
Because
so,
Ellen gets up and she hears a call from the window,
and this is her girl power moment.
She
okay?
opens the window.
She lets him in.
She lets him in.
Just to fight with him. I love it.
It backfires a bit.
Yes, it definitely does.
But yeah, she just basically calls him a weird pedo a couple times.
Yeah.
In Old English speaking.
Yeah.
Not Old English the language, as in older English.
Yeah.
And he gets a bit butthurt and then says, slaps her and just says, "You have 3 nights.
Each night everybody's gonna die."
Yep. Basically, every night he will take more. He will kill more of the people she loves until at the very end of the 3rd night, if she doesn't submit to him, she will kill Thomas. He will kill Thomas.
Yeah.
She doesn't seem very happy about this whole ordeal.
She also doesn't seem to fully believe him either. She's like, "Yeah, bullshit. You and your ultimatums can pack up and leave." But
unfortunately, he acts on one of them right away.
Yeah, so
by giving Anne the plague.
Yes. She wakes
and
up.
Hysteria.
Yeah. Ellen wakes up and Anne is on the floor covered with rats.
Mm-hmm. And she's now in bed sick. And she does have the same level of she's the hysterical, he's coming.
Yeah, he's definitely haunting her as well because she looks at Ellen and even says "What is this darkness?"
Mm-hmm.
And you get the sense of they're going through similar things, except Anna has the plague, so she does seem to recover a bit from the plague. I don't know if you noticed that. Did you notice that? She does seem to recover a bit.
She's at least decent.
Yeah, she's not.
I mean, technically, she only lives 1 more day.
Yeah, but she doesn't die of plague.
No. But this leads into a very interesting conversation in the hallway where Ellen's trying to convince Friedrich that it is this darkness, and Friedrich understandably is
"Get out of my house.
Get out of my house." And she's like, "Why do you hate me?" And he's like,
and he does the man thing of old, times of, "I hope for your husband you don't speak like this in front of people," which, boo-hoo, shut up. But
I still think, at least for the time, he is being very reasonable.
as reasonable as it can be.
If you look at it from his perspective
Right.
of being a man of modern science,
Yeah.
he's looking at this, he's like, my wife has bought your hysterics,
Bullshit, yeah.
now has the plague, and you still won't let it go that there's a demon.
Right.
Get out of my house.
Right. And kind of points out that he's been essentially paying for their living, which I think is an underlying subplot that she doesn't know about that.
And here's the thing, I genuinely also don't think that Friedrich cared.
No, I don't think he cared.
He didn't care, but he saw it in the moment to say basically I will call you and Thomas a coach.
Yeah.
On my dollar, of course.
Right.
To say I have given you guys more than enough.
Right. Exactly.
And that's what makes Aaron Taylor Johnson's character so interesting to me, is because he is a representation of this kind of patriarchal kind of society, but he's not a monster.
Yeah.
He is a very reasonable person. He is too reasonable. That's kind of his whole thing, is his rational, for the time, modern brain cannot open himself up to these hysterics.
Yeah, because honestly, despite, while it would have been... Never mind.
I mean,
this
think
point
about
doesn't
it,
make
though.
any sense.
Think about it, though. we'll get there, but what makes him finally believe? Thomas.
Yeah.
Showing him the bite marks that he has.
Right.
Is that because, it just feels like, now I'm the only one who doesn't believe? Maybe. Or is it because man I trust is telling me?
Yeah.
Capital M on the man.
While they're trying to leave, we get some glimpses at the two doctors and the first guy who I can't remember his name.
I just call him the doctor.
The doctor.
There's the doctor and the professor.
Yeah.
That's what I choose to call them.
The doctor finally tells him about what's the proprietor's name again?
Hairnock.
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 And the professor's like, why the fuck did you not tell me about this guy until he escaped your hospital? This would have been really good information.
Find that man.
We have to find him. And so they go and they look at the business and they find all of the occult stuff and a book that is essentially their religious text.
Yes. And that's where the professor, quietly to himself, learns that in every story, basically, a woman sacrifices herself by making sure that the Nosferatu is out past Crocock.
Yeah,
which means
occupied for a
sunrise.
whole evening.
Yes, because he must return to his place of rest.
Mhm.
During the day.
So that leads to them kind of trying to search out and find
Hairnock.
no.
Okay.
Ellen.
Ellen.
Sorry, I'm getting like tired and my brain isn't working. And we get some more glimpses into Thomas and Ellen as they're kind of both recovering from not recovering, but like trying to. He's
decide
recovering,
what to do next, basically.
And we get this.
Thomas is like, we gotta leave.
Yeah, we get this really interesting scene where Ellen finally tells Thomas. Sorry, I died.
She got the plague.
Ellen finally confesses to him about Orlok and how she's really the reason that he's around, and that he came to her when she needed companionship and tenderness, she says.
Then he turned vile and cruel.
Yes. And suddenly, while she's going through all of this, I forget what Thomas even says to her, but then you see her demeanor completely change.
Mm-hmm.
And she turns.
Because Count Orlok tried to tell her, Thomas sold you for just a mere bag of gold.
Yeah. And she turns and she tells him that Orlok told her that.
Mm-hmm.
And he's like, no, what? What? And then she starts yelling at him and convulsing, and she ends up on the floor and tearing her dress open. And it's very clearly obvious that she's like possessed.
And he's like, I'll go get the professor. And she's like, no.
She crawls on the floor. It's so creepy.
Mm-hmm.
But like, then
Then they do stuff.
Then they do things.
And she's very adamant about make him watch.
Yeah.
But then she like
snaps at him.
She's like, I'm unclean.
Yeah, like she's like, don't
touch me.
Don't touch me. I'm unclean. And
he's like, never. It's very
heartfelt. I started crying.
Yeah, it's a bit intense.
This is where I first start crying, to be honest.
But meanwhile, we see Nosferatu's shadow hand go over Friedrich and says, "Do not wake."
Yes.
And we hear the kids start screaming, and this scene is so upsetting.
It's very upsetting.
And opens the kid's room, and you hear just the sound of
yeah.
And then you just see Count Orlok's holding both of the kids and just drops both of their bodies after,
Yeah.
And then we don't see what happens to Anne. It's implied she died.
Yeah.
And this is where Aaron Taylor Johnson really gets to show off his chops because we cut immediately to the funeral.
Yes.
And he is a very distraught man. If there is a brand of performance that always gets me, it's always sad dads. Sad dads always make me sad.
Well, and even the thing with this scene that like totally every single time it starts with the coffins being put into the crypt.
And you see how small they are.
And you see the children's coffins. Children's coffins are the saddest thing I've ever seen in my life. They're so depressing.
Yeah. But he catches a glimpse of, I don't know why this image goes so hard, of the professor, the doctor, Tom, and Ellen just kind of standing there in the in the snow, and he starts basically raving and going off at Ellen, about like accusing her of bringing this plague and like this is all her fault, and then Thomas calms him down by saying it's real, and shows him his bite marks, and he begrudgingly gets into the carriage with them and is apparently going to help them with their plan, but his health is not going to let him for very long.
Yeah.
So the plan is essentially to find his place of rest and kill him before nightfall.
And destroy it as well, so he can't go back to it. Meanwhile, the professor, this is meanwhile in the same space, the professor and Ellen are kind of looking at each other, and they pull up to the professor's apartment, and she says, "Let me walk you to your door." And so they go up and have a chat, and he basically says that she's the key to all of it.
It needs to be her, and
It
she's
needs to be her.
like, I know.
She's like, basically, I knew. I've known this whole time, but I've been seeing if there's another alternative way. And you can tell he doesn't like it either, because he says, in the modern world, this is all very confusing and you don't get to whatever. But he says in the past,
he's like in a different time, you'd be a high priestess of Isis.
And
which is an interesting line in modern times, but
but she just gets a moment to like stare into the distance and look wistful.
Yes. So we know that the plan is not exactly the plan that everyone else is clued into.
Yeah.
But as they're getting ready for the plan, they're like, "Where's Friedrich?"
Well, first she says like a sort of half goodbye to Thomas. It feels like she's still trying to convince him not to go. A little, like she convinces it. I don't know. It's like she doesn't want him to go still, but she lets him go, and they kind of argue, kind of not.
Yeah.
And he leaves, and she just softly says to herself goodbye, which was really sad. Really sad.
Because they first have to go find Friedrich.
Yeah.
And Friedrich is not doing so hot. One, he has the plague.
He very clearly has the plague.
And two, he's having a little bit of a episode and engages in a little bit of necrophilic activity.
Yeah.
Not to the point of, complete necrophilia, but he's kissing his wife's body.
It's implied that there's complete necrophilia.
They still have their clothes on. Let a man dream.
Okay.
It's too upsetting.
Okay.
It's too upsetting.
Okay.
To believe it the other way. But he basically dies right there. And poor Thomas, he said he simply can't bear anymore. And they burn the corpses, but they've wasted too much time. Thomas is like, he surely has risen by now. But they carry on to the castle anyway, and they find his coffin. It's surrounded by rats, and they lift off the lid and they stake poor Hernock.
Yeah.
I don't know if poor Hernock is the right word,
Right.
but I love how like he's like, oh, I was supposed to be immortal, his servant.
Yeah, I should have been a French. He says like a French aristocrat or something.
And then it's so funny the way like this man is dying, and Willem goes, "Die faster!" essentially.
Well, he says, "Stake me again," and is super dramatic about it. Is Hairlock says that? Hey, whatever. And then Willem is like, "All right, put the guy out of his misery," and just grabs a thing and donks the stake all the way through him.
That's when Thomas is like, "You knew it would be empty. You knew he wouldn't be here." And he's like,
and we see while all this has been going on that Ellen has opened her window and said, "Come to me," and dressed herself all up like a bride.
And Willem Dafoe has a cool, if not kind of out of character.
Kind of out of place, but kick-ass monologue.
Not out of character, out of place. That's a better way to put it.
I don't think it's out of character, but I think the buildup that's supposed to be there got cut or something.
Yeah.
Because it just feels out of place. He feels like he built into madman. He went from like, I'm just a little eccentric, a little kooky, to
mad with power.
Totally crazy. And I think we just missed a little bit in there.
Yeah. And then we get the iconic shots of Count Orlok in the shadows going up the stairs.
And meanwhile, I've been crying this whole time, and we get the shadows of Count Orlok going up the stairs, and he's doing the thing with the arms and the fingers. And I know it's needed, okay, but it makes me giggle every time, and it totally pulls me out of it because I'm like, oh, spooky man, go, I'm a T-Rex. Like, blah, blah, blah.
I hate this. I like it.
Blah, blah, blah.
But so they go up and say vows, and then the grossest sentence is, "We now are united in spirit, and now must be united in flesh." And I'm like, no, please. And I'd say outside of some unfortunate sound effects, it's done as least gross as possible.
Well, even the shots, the way they're done, remind me of like rom-com-esque sex scenes.
Sure.
Or like teenage romance sex scenes where they just show heads and shoulders, and then it does the pan up from the bed. That's a very common thing.
It's just unfortunate how loud the sound of the beginning of activities, I will say.
It's what it sounds like in every teenage
It's not
sex
that
scene.
loud.
No.
You don't hear a... You do not hear that in teen sex scenes.
I guess I didn't notice the actual
Yeah, you hear him go in really loudly.
I was distracted by the moaning, I think, quite honestly.
It's gross. Then he goes in a different way, which is he starts biting her chest and sucking her blood.
Yeah.
And he keeps like getting up and stopping, and then she keeps going, no. And then like, it's so upsetting. But the sun comes up as poor Thomas, the shots of him running back home like are devastating.
It's just tragic.
But he be sucking too long, and the sun came up, and the scene of him dying.
Cock crowed. By the way, the cock did crow. Literally, the cock crowed.
But the scene where he does die, I could have done without the kind of CG looking blood tears. But other than that, it was pretty cool.
I thought they were cool. I thought it looked cool because it was the same image that Thomas had been seeing throughout the movie flashing of Ellen. It's the same exact effect there. So
So Count Orlok is no more.
Yeah.
Thomas is devastated. Ellen is dead. And Willem Dafoe has a new cat.
True. He does walk away with the cat.
And that's Nosferatu.
Yeah.
It is my headcanon that really there was another way, but Willem Dafoe just wanted another cat.
I mean, in the original Dracula story, Jonathan, who's Thomas, does stake Dracula. And the whole weird thing doesn't happen there. But this is it's a tragedy. In the old Greek way, it's a tragedy. That's a Greek tragedy there that I feel like I just watched. And I think that's why the tears are so willingly flowing. And for me, that scene that we kind of briefly went over with Thomas, where she says she's unclean and he basically says never.
Yeah.
And you're perfect and I love you and all those things. I'm bawling my eyes out because I knew for a fact exactly where it was going.
Unfortunate.
Right when that scene happened, I went, oh, damn it. She's gonna tango to the death.
Tango to the death. So we're going to play a little mini game.
A mini game?
Austin was originally going to be on this episode with us because he saw the movie with us.
Yes.
He is a complete and utter stan of the 1922 film, the silent film. So he disagrees with us a lot on a lot of this. He listed me with a list of his pros and cons and feelings of the movie.
I was really excited because I did ask him to be on the episode after we were going to do it originally with him, and then some things happened and we had to move recording to today. And I was like, are you sure you can't join us? I feel like that debate is going to be lighthearted and fun and very interesting. So this is our supplement for that debate.
So, pro number 1, movie is gorgeous. It looks incredible. I agree, obviously.
Yeah.
Now, pro number 2, and I think this is a wording thing. He said, this is one of the best performances I've seen from Nicholas Hoult, Willem Dafoe, and Aaron Taylor-Johnson. The snub of Lily Rose Depp, I'm going to attribute to
just
the phrasing of best performance I've seen from, meaning this is the first you've seen of her, Austin.
Yeah.
Because she did an amazing job. And
Lily
you
Rose
snubbed her.
Depp, she carries.
The film is almost 100% accurate to the 1922 original version. They're both adapting a book, so that makes sense.
Yes, as well
but there
as
are literal scenes that are pretty much
the imagery is like the same. There's the scene where he walks into the inn, because I just watched it last night again. It's the same scene, but with more set dressing and all the stuff. The same amount of people are sitting with the same amount of people standing, and the lights are all in the same places. It was really cool for me to see that.
Yes, indeed. The ending is intact of Nosferatu dying by the sacrifice of Ellen, and he appreciated that.
Do you think there's a reason that Ellen rhymes with Helen? Because she's like Helen of Troy?
Maybe. Probably.
Sorry.
I don't know. I'm not an expert on Greek tragedies. The music was top-notch, I agree.
Mm-hmm.
I liked how you'd often hear organ motifs that are very similar to the ones playing throughout the entirety of the original. Nosferatu's voice was as I expected, and I loved it. They were willing to show some of the darker parts of Nosferatu's curse, such as killing of children. And that's where the pros end.
All right, here we go.
Cons. It felt more art film than horror with sprinkled in jump scares. I never found myself uneasy or scared. I only slightly jumped at one moment because I genuinely wasn't expecting it, and it wasn't even a jump scare. I think it was a dog or something. This movie is one of the only horror movies that I was wishing so badly to not have jump scares and simply rely on being unnerving and disturbing and quiet.
So I sort of get where he's coming from with that. I think that the jump scares didn't feel cheap, though. I don't think
I
they
disagree.
felt
There was a
cheap.
couple that felt cheap.
Maybe, but they all contributed to the plot or to the
Well, cheap doesn't necessarily mean unnecessary. Those are different to me. Cheap means it clearly was meant to just get a quick startle.
I feel like all-
I think of Thomas seeing him when Ellen's trying to like wake him up. Like that was a bit cheap.
well, if
Even the one at the
that
very beginning,
definition's stupid,
I
I'm gonna
thought was
say,
kinda
James.
cheap.
All jump
What?
scares are made to give you a quick startle. That's the whole point of them.
well, yeah, that's the definition of a jump scare. But when I
Yeah.
say cheap, I mean not built up at all. It's just sudden. It's just, bah. Did I get you?
I feel like, I don't know.
There's definitely such thing as a cheap jump scare
Well,
and a not cheap jump scare.
I agree, but I don't think these were cheap jump scares. I didn't
Okay,
feel
well,
they
that's
were
your
cheap.
opinion.
I didn't feel they were cheap jump scares. Your definition just was when you said, I think a cheap jump scare is just a startle. And I was like, that's what a jump scare is, James.
Well, yeah, you know that's not exactly what I meant. You're twisting my words.
We're going to play it back. We're going to play it back.
Nosferatu is just a dude. Max Schreck's Count Orlok doesn't even look human in certain scenes. I wasn't expecting a 1922 horror to affect me, but his slow entrance with the intent to kill Thomas in the original set me with deep unease. Basically saying he didn't like the look of Count Orlok just being a dude.
Oh, I liked it.
I liked it too.
I think
can't
it
even argue
contributed to.
I like both. That's the thing. I like the idea of just making him a corpse, basically, of a dead nobleman, because that's what he should be.
Because that's what he is. He's just he's an immortal dead nobleman, essentially.
Yeah. I like
that his flesh is rotting, like clearly rotting.
Nosferatu's mustache in this movie just makes me chuckle, even if it is accurate.
It's cool as fuck.
I kind of like it.
I think it's cool as fuck. I think his drip is so cool.
Now, someone did point out to me that he kind of, in some shots, looks like Dr. Eggman, played by Jim Carrey.
No! Why'd you do that? Why'd you tell me that?
Because now you see it too, don't you?
Oh no! But without the mustache, we don't get the blood dripping from the mustache,
Now
which
this
is a cool
gonna be
effect.
Interesting. I am steadfast against nudity in films because I see no purpose in it. I don't carry perspective from the art community and Roman traits that they inherited. There are far better and more modest ways to portray things like sex and innocence, and I would greatly prefer. I had this as a major issue with Oppenheimer as well.
So, I don't know. Nudity in movies just doesn't really affect me. I think I guess I get your point because it wasn't exactly necessary for this movie.
I'd say the only scene where you could call it necessary was the ending.
Yeah, but
But her like envisions being naked and like the virgin at the beginning
being nude. I agree that wasn't really necessary.
Did it bother us though?
No, it didn't bother me.
We're a horror podcast. We cover horror movies, so we're just used to it.
There are movies where the nudity is used really well.
Mhm.
And it's an empowering thing, but I don't know this movie.
And there's also the opposite of another way that nudity is used well, where it makes the character feel vulnerable, and therefore you feel vulnerable.
Yeah. But I would agree that it's not exactly necessary for this movie, but does it bother me? No. In certain spaces, it's not necessary for this movie.
Therein lies one of the only major differences between the original and this retelling. In the original, Orlok only learns of Ellen after he's shown a picture of her by Thomas during his visit to the castle, in which he comments that she has a beautiful neck. And then he sets his sight upon her in a more predatory fashion. Then he sets his sights on her in a more predatory fashion than some, as opposed to some form of twisted one flesh concept desire. He had no deep personal connection. The pedo vampire thing never happened. So he didn't like the childhood implications, I guess.
Okay. So what I'm getting from that doesn't check out to me, because in the original, he's still sent to the castle under some sort of, it's a trick to get him there. I have to rewatch the original again to understand how.
Well, in the original, I will say there's no like protesting about like, oh, well, why do I have to go there? He just goes there. So it could just be as straightforward in the original as.
No, but in the original, the proprietor who sends him there is already, it's made clear that he's sending them there on purpose because he's part of Orlok's cult. Why would Orlok want this random guy there?
That's what I was saying, is what I think he might have been literally sending them there to sell Orlok the house to move Orlok there. Like, it's more straightforward.
Right, but then why would Orlok want to be there anyway? I feel like I think it's just more of an implied undertone. It's an implied thing that Orlok wants Ellen in the original, whereas this is like, it's spelled out for you. I disagree that there's no predatory vampire thing. I think the whole point is that he essentially groomed Ellen. Like, this centuries-old monster heard the cries of a random teenager at night wanting someone to hold her and decided, I'ma fuck that, like, and convinced her that was a good thing, and then haunted her for the rest of her life. That is very much a representation of predatory behavior in a way that we understand it better now, where people are tricked into thinking what is going on is okay. And it haunts them for the rest of their life when they realize it isn't.
Yeah, I agree with you.
So I fully disagree with that the predatory vampire thing isn't there. It's very clearly there. It's just more deeply seated.
Yeah. Wait, I lost my place.
He lost his place.
Keep talking.
But yeah, I disagree. I think in the original, it's got to be implied that Orlok wants Ellen, because why else are they sending Tom? Like, why else is Orlok trying to trick Thomas into getting there?
He makes a point here about like her on her own decision making in the original, making the sacrifice, but she did in this too. She just also had another guy who was like. Yeah,
she had already made the decision before she talked to him. She just needed somebody to verify her in her decision making. Essentially, that's why she wanted to talk to him so bad.
I purposefully didn't like read these too deeply when he sent them to me because I wanted them to be fresh in my brain. Also, his desire for her in the original was never implied to be sexual. I have no idea where they got that from. The entering followed by biting is, and the entering, which is an innuendo, followed by the biting was utterly repulsive to me. I think that was the point. But also, vampires have always been associated,
with innocence and sex this whole time. The reason they wouldn't have displayed that or made it obvious in the original like they couldn't. It wasn't modest to do that. We're more open.
I was surprised with how much they were willing to do in the 1922 film, because I was kind of shocked. I was like, whoa, a lot of graphic death going on here.
But modesty, especially when it comes to sex in the 20s and on film, is a very controversial topic. Like, you're not gonna show sex on screen. That's not okay. And the association with Dracula and sex has always been there. maybe not in explicit terms, but it's always been a question of morality and innocence, which has to do with sex implicitly. And we are just a more open to sexual understanding kind of culture nowadays. It's not a locked away kind of thing as much as it could be less locked away, but we're okay with understanding the morality of it, and that when in these stories a woman is giving up her innocence or giving up her body, that means sex.
Yes. I was going to try and argue these points for him, but I just don't agree with it. I can't get myself to.
Yeah, you're okay.
In the original, he kneels by her bed as the lights turn incredibly low as he begins to drain the life from her neck. The implication is that whatever he's after whatever power the blood of an innocent woman will grant him, not whatever the concept of one flesh is that the writers were going with. But I would argue,
don't know what this one flesh thing he's picking up on is.
I think it's just because he's saying now we united in flesh. Like I think it's literally the same thing.
Yeah, it's essentially the same thing. The idea here is that his search was not necessarily for power, but his downfall was his lust. His search was for it's a notion less of the power hungry also always search for more power, the notion of evil.
He says on several occasions he is not capable of love. He does not love her.
Yeah,
he just wants her.
Lusts for her.
Yes.
The association is not one of power, but one of evil has a downfall. And that downfall is often going to be they go for what they want no matter what. And in this case, his downfall is his lust.
And then one last point is the necrophilia scene was equally useless. He could have just died with, and the emotions may have been less diluted because now I'm sad and nauseous.
Well, the point was to be unsettling. Isn't that the unsettling thing he said he was missing in the movie?
That does remind me of an argument we had because I was like, it sounds like you got mad that things that were unsettling were unsettling. And he's like, well, I just don't think that excuses some things. And
but
I'm like, okay.
That was the point. That was what makes it a horror movie.
Like, well, what's the point of the point? And I'm like, oh, the point of the point is
That's
the point. And I
is...
said, and then what's the point of the point is the point. That's kind of how that went. So, and to be clear, I liked the movie. I give it 7 exposed tits out of 10.
I think we just have a difference in opinion on immodesty, essentially.
Yeah, pretty much.
And my thing is a lot of the things that are unsettling, like I guess that is the reason for the nudity in the movie, is to make you uncomfortable. This is a horror movie. So we're trying to do things while we're telling a deep story and it plays more like a drama. These other things, these things that he's uncomfortable with, are to display the horror and make you uncomfortable.
And to be fair, these are the opinions of someone who doesn't like horror, like who doesn't see the reason to watch it, but also is a film guy. So he's like, he'll pick horror movies that feel like important to see. But the thing is, with movies like this, especially if it's a Robert Eggers movie, you're going to see something uncomfy.
Oh, yeah.
Like, you're going to see something that you might look back at and be like, did I need to see that? Did anyone need to see that? Did anyone need to make that? Like,
I will say, like, in my notes from watching this movie, nudity is mentioned, where I'm like, wow, Robert Eggers loves his nudity. Like,
but that's the thing. He's not sexist. We saw a lot of penises in the lighthouse.
Oh yeah, no, he includes all the nudity. It's just that he knows that a naked body makes someone feel uncomfortable and
for
vulnerable.
Several reasons, and it's very.
And I think that's why you see more nude male bodies in his movies rather than, well, you see a mix of both, honestly, but a male female body is more implicitly sexual. Whereas a male, wait, did I say what? A nude female body is more implicitly sexual, whereas
That's
a
exactly
male
what you said.
a male nude body is more implicitly vulnerable and uncomfortable. And I think that's another point he's trying to make, because when we see Count Orlok as a nude body, we're scared. But when we see the Virgin and we see Ellen, we are not scared. We're not feeling weird about it. It's more like boobies. or butt. The naked girl had a good butt. She definitely did.
Yeah, she did.
Riding bareback.
That's all I have. That was Nosferatu.
Yeah, go see it.
Go see it while it's still in theaters.
See it while it's still in theaters, because the sounds and everything,
It's
way
great.
his
It's
voice
gorgeous.
rumbles, it's gonna come through better in a theater. And
Unless you got a really dope setup at home.
yeah. And also, the one thing that I forgot to mention while we were talking about it is the use of lack of light, not the use of dark, because I feel like they're different things. The use of lack of light, like as if when you're painting you use negative space, lack of light would be negative space.
Shout out the scene in the original where it was a negative for some reason.
Cool as fuck.
It was pretty cool. They dressed the horses up in all white so they would appear black still in the negative.
That's so cool. But the use of lack of light is a really great thing this movie uses. So seeing it in a movie theater, that comes through a lot better, because the screen is so bright. And when you have darkness against that bright screen, it contrasts very clearly. So I would say try to see it in the theaters while you can. I'm obviously also not opposed to this making a lot of money. So
yeah. Well, thank you so much for joining us today.
Yeah.
Go to jumperscape.com, find all of our stuff there, merchandise, Discord links. Also, Glitch Energy, that's spelled with a Y. Connor 141 at checkout, CONNOR 141 at checkout. No Q&A this week, sorry. Just kind of ran out of time. I promise it will return next week, Slip, because that's probably where all the questions are coming from.
We love you, Slip.
We love you, Slip. You were patron of the month again. You're welcome. But yeah, so that's all we have to say today, and we'll see you next week here on Room 237.
Bye.
Thank you for joining us this evening, stranger. If you enjoyed your time with us, please consider supporting us at patreon.com/jumperscape or join the community at discord.gg/jumperscape. We thank you for your listenership and hope you enjoyed.